Hi, I'm Graham Alcott. I've just been running a workshop here for the FSA, and it's been on the subject of productivity, time management, and prioritization. This is a subject that I've been interested in for a number of years. I wrote a book called How to Be a Productivity Ninja, which is one of the best-selling productivity and time management books in the UK, also in Australia, in the Netherlands, and elsewhere in the world as well. And it's also the basis of my business. So I have a business called Think Productive, and we've got offices all over the world. We work with everybody from Amazon to Disney to Jaguar Land Rover, all kinds of companies, organizations, parts of the UK government, big charities and NGOs. And essentially what we're doing with those organizations is helping people to do their best work. An essential part of that is this message that I share with people about making space for what matters. For me, that's the definition of good productivity. It's about making space for what matters. It's not necessarily about getting more done or just being faster on the hamster wheel. It's really about how can we make sure that we're making space. So the really important stuff is what we're prioritizing, and also away from work so that we feel present and calm and able to have a really healthy work-life balance and a really healthy life away from our work as well. And that's something that I just think is so important. It's often missed when we talk about productivity and time management. It becomes all about commitments and performance, but not actually about who do we want to be as well as what do we want to do. So that's really been the focus of my work over many years. I've written 6 books now. How to Be a Productivity Ninja, probably the best known one. I also have a book called Study Ninja, which takes a lot of the same ideas but puts it into the context of studying for GCSEs and A-levels and undergraduate degrees. I have a book called How to Have the Energy, which is all about how to eat and have the best nutrition to really fuel your brain to be as active and give you as much vitality as you possibly can have and be less stressed. I have a book called How to Fix Meetings, which basically does what it says on the tin. So half of that book is about how to have fewer meetings, and the other half of the book is how to really make the meetings that we really need count for so much more than we do. So how to fix meetings. And then the most recent book is a book called Kind, The Quiet Power of Kindness at Work, which was Financial Times Book of the Month when it came out late last year. And we're currently one of the nominees for the 2025 Business Book of the Year Awards in the UK. So very excited for that. Keep your fingers crossed for me. So that's me and my work. I'm based in Brighton in the UK, and my company, Think Productive, works all over the world. We've got offices in the Netherlands and Australia, Dubai, and North America, as well as in the UK. So let's talk about a couple of the main takeaways, a couple of the main points that I've been sharing with people as part of this workshop today here at the FSA. So the first one is something that I think is a really underutilized habit and something that really helps us to be able to see the wood from the trees and really understand what our priorities are, what our commitments are, what we really need to be focused on. And that is getting everything out of your head. We often carry so much stuff around in terms of potential commitments, things that we might need to think about, stuff that we might need to work on. And the brain doesn't really, the brain is not really a good tool to really enable us to do really quality thinking around that when we keep it all in our head. Generally, our short-term memory doesn't remember more than about 12 or 13 things. So being able to get that stuff out of your head, being able to see it in front of you, being able to then ask yourself good questions about that and really start to see out of those 20 things, which are the 3 big priorities, is something that's really, really important and really underutilized. If you've ever been sat the day before you're about to go on holiday and you've sat down, you've made a list, and at the end of writing a list, you just felt a bit better, you actually know already what I'm talking about here. It's just something that we don't do all the time habitually and sort of keep as a regular habit. So collecting and capturing all of those different ideas, whether they come when we're in the shower or when we're running or when we're sat at our desk or, over the weekend or whatever, being able to collect those things together and then actually do something with them and know that we're actually going to have a process where we're going to follow up on those things and figure them out. It's a really underutilized productivity habit. So my advice to you is, if you're feeling at all stressed or overwhelmed or uncertain, or you're feeling a sense of kind of task paralysis in the work that you're doing, one of the best places you can start is just to get a piece of paper, or type it into a Word document, or type it into somewhere else, type it into the notes in your phone, and just brain dump. Get all that stuff out of your head. You'll start to see already, just as you start to interact with it, that it starts to feel a bit more manageable, a bit more in control, and it's kind of easier to do something with it. So just getting it all out of your head is a really, really great starting point. So we talked about that during the workshop. One of the other things we talked about, which I think for me is the most important kind of keystone habit when it comes to productivity, is this idea of the weekly review. It's such an important tool for prioritization. And what this involves is setting some time in your week, typically between 1 and 2 hours. For me personally, it takes probably about 90 minutes a week. But during that time, you're going to set that time aside to just do quality thinking, to be your own project manager, to sit down and just assess and work out what is most important for me to do over the next few days. And that is thinking that often we snatch little moments where we're thinking along those lines as we go through the week. But giving yourself the proper space to do that, it actually, if you start to do that habitually, it actually saves you time. It feels like you're adding an extra hour and a half into your week, but actually you're not, because then you don't have to do those little bits of snatched strategic time throughout the rest of the week as well. When I do that weekly checklist for myself, I'm going through things like, I'm looking at the last 2 weeks on my calendar and then 3 weeks ahead on my calendar. And I'm just working out, were there some actions that were needed from any of those meetings that I had, or any of those places that I visited, or the work that I was doing. And I'm just generating those as the next tasks that I'm going to do over the next few days. I'm thinking ahead to travel plans or what's coming on the horizon. Who do I need to give a heads up to about something that I'm doing? So really kind of, in many ways, quite a simple process. But one of those things that when we just follow that habitually, and we're doing that every week, and we're doing it consistently, it starts to really just bear fruit in terms of these very big results and big impact. And really, when it comes to prioritization, it's really hard to know what your biggest priorities are if you're not looking at everything holistically, if you're not thinking about that project or that idea in the context of the other 5 or 6 big ideas that you're working on or feel pressure towards. So being able to do that all together is really good practice in terms of prioritization. And it also just makes you feel way calmer, more in control, and just, you know, it just gives you a better sense of the work that you might need to do over the next few days. So for me, that's a really big underutilized habit. A lot of people will have some kind of version of that in terms of maybe at the end of a week, just wrapping up what you've been doing, or on a Friday or a Monday, mapping out the week ahead a little bit. So people have versions of that already. For many people, this is not a brand new skill that you have to create, but just adding to that, making it consistent, creating a checklist around it, putting a process in place around it that you can just then keep tweaking and refining, just really helps you to just have a better sense of control. And I think, you know, for me, often when I look at my projects list, there's typically 60 to 70 projects on there. It's possible to have a whole bunch of things that you're working on. You're juggling lots of different stuff, and you can be totally overloaded but not feel overwhelmed. And that really comes from that habitual approach and being your own project manager, setting some time aside for that every week. So as I said at the beginning, I think for me, like, productivity is about making space for what matters. Often what really matters particularly to senior leaders, to people managing or involved with big teams, what matters is quality thinking. And we don't make the time and the space to really do the quality thinking that helps us to make breakthroughs around the work that we're doing. So those are a couple of things that I've been sharing. And I'll share one final one, which is what do we do when we might have a really good idea of what we're supposed to be doing, and then we're procrastinating? And I think this is important for a whole bunch of reasons. There's a whole load of psychology that goes on around productivity that's really important. When I first started teaching and coaching productivity back in 2009, 2010, I thought it was all about lists. I thought it was all about systems and apps and adopting the right kind of structures. And what I started to realize is a big part of the psychology of productivity is actually the psychology of humans. And the psychology of humans is messy. A lot of productivity actually is about fear and guilt. People feel a real sense of guilt about the things they haven't achieved. People are fearful about what's coming down the track. And this stuff really derails us. It gets in the way of when we're trying to do not only really quality thinking, but really quality doing as well. Because we've got the list of the things we need to do. It's just we don't want to do them for some reason. We're resisting it. We're putting it off. This is where the psychology comes in, and a particular part of the brain plays a big part of this, which is the lizard brain, the amygdala. It's the part of the brain that we have just at the back of our heads. It's the part that gives us fight or flight. It's the part that gives us this sense of resistance, of wanting to cower under the duvet and not do that thing. We particularly feel a sense of resistance where there might be some judgment. We might be sending a report off to our boss and we're worried about what they might think about it. We will feel that resistance if there might be some conflict. We might be giving someone bad news or delivering, really difficult feedback to somebody. All these things are things that when you look at those items on your to-do list that contain that kind of stuff, you almost physically resist. I can sometimes see that when I work with people is you watch the shoulders hunch up a little bit as they get to that item on the list where they read something out or whatever. And then there's things we can do about that. So I have this acronym in the book, DUST, D-U-S-T. And so basically as a diagnostic tool, when you look at something on your to-do list that feels like it's scary or there's some kind of resistance to it, then what I'm going to invite you to think about is which of the following things is true. Is the thing something that you're resisting because it just feels difficult? Is it because it feels like it's undefined? Is it just that it feels a bit scary? Or does it just feel a bit tedious? So D-U-S-T, difficult, undefined, scary, and tedious. And depending on which one of those four things it is, there are then different strategies and different ways that you can use to overcome that resistance. We have to really work with our own psychology. That part of our brain, the lizard brain, it's the evolutionary part of the brain. Therefore, it shouts really loud. It's often as irrational as it can be, it's often shouting much louder than the more logical frontal cortex part of the brain, which logically knows we're okay. But because this part of our brain is shouting loud, we're panicking, we're resisting, we're not quite getting to the thing that we need to get to. So if something's difficult, take it off your list and think about how do you plug the skills gap between those two things? How do you work out who to get advice from? How do you learn the new skills so that it's no longer as difficult? Then you can put it back on your list. So plug the skills gap is the way to solve the resistance where something feels difficult. If it's undefined, then you need two things. You need to know what's the desired project outcome. Where do you want to get to? How do you know when you're done? What does success look like? So what's the desired project outcome? Quantify that as much as possible. And then you need the next physical action. What's the next thing I'm going to do? What does it look like when I'm physically doing it? Is it typing an email? Is it a call? Is it talking to someone? Get the physicality of that in place and define those two things as specifically as possible. Once you have that definition, it becomes a lot easier to start. You have momentum. You can start to get it done. When something feels scary, there's a whole bunch of different stuff you can do around this. My favorite one is the idea of creating a bigger fear. So we all remember that time when we were at school and we had some kind of essay to hand in or some kind of project to hand in. And we leave it right till the last minute, right? And we haven't done the thing. And then it's like it's due in on the Friday and suddenly on Thursday night, we have a bigger fear. And the fear is, it's Friday tomorrow, I've got to hand something in. I don't want to be the person who turns up and says, I haven't done my homework. So that's a bigger fear. And at work, we can use that same psychology. So we can think about, okay, so this is a thing that I'm going to do for my boss. I'm really worried that my boss is going to judge me for it. But if I set the meeting up where I'm sat in the meeting room with my boss, I can picture that happening. I know it's in both of our diaries. Now I have a bigger fear, which is I can't turn up to that meeting with nothing. So I've got to start. So it's almost like tricking your brain into making the moves that gets it started. And one of the things that often comes into this as well is the idea of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is the stuff that we just intrinsically want to do, like it's inside of us, we're going to do it. Sometimes we have to give ourselves the extrinsic motivation. We have to have someone else holding us accountable. If you were ever a smoker, think about how you gave up smoking. It's probably by telling lots of other people. And then the final one is tedious, right? So we've got difficult, we've got undefined, we've got scary, and finally tedious. So with stuff that's tedious, how do you make it fun? How do you make it a game? How do you make it entertaining? One of the best gamified things in productivity that you may have come across before is with email, the idea of inbox zero. Turns email into a game. Get my inbox to zero. Yes, finished, complete. That feels way more fun, way more satisfying. We get a dopamine hit from that, as opposed to I've got more emails I need to do. So how can you make something feel less tedious, make it feel a bit more fun, a bit more accessible, and that's the way to overcome that resistance. And then the final thing I'll say about all of that, whether it's making space for what matters and prioritization, whether it's getting everything out of your head, whether it's thinking about this idea of having some kind of checklist, being your own project manager, or whether it's thinking about this idea of procrastination and how we solve it. The final thing that I'll say is that we're all different in how we respond to this stuff and which things work. And what's really interesting to me about this whole subject area of productivity is there are some good practices. There are some great habits that we can develop. And for some people, they'll develop this thing over here, but they'll struggle with this thing over here. And for other people, it's the opposite. And for me, that's what makes this work really interesting and why I've been doing it for such a long time is that it's really fascinating to me, the bits that people just have light bulbs about and just really grab onto really easily versus the bits that people resist. And so there's something really important just to say as we finish around that, which is that when it comes to humans and productivity, we do some amazing work despite the fact that we are human. And because when we're human, what that means is we are a little bit weird. We've probably got some biases. We've probably got some foibles, some things we don't do particularly well. So it's really important to give yourself the credit for the things that you're doing really well. And also just to be kind to yourself with the things that might take you a bit more time to adopt those particular habits, a bit more time to develop those skills. And I kind of see productivity a bit like it's like peeling an onion, right? So you can get the next layer, and then there's the next layer, and there's the next layer. And I think with productivity, everybody has something to teach and everybody has something to learn. That's really great news if you're on a mission to improve your productivity, but you're also part of a team because you can share that stuff and you can advise people and take advice from people. And finally, I think no one gets productivity 100% right all of the time. Even me, who has written books about this stuff and has coached many, many people over many years on this topic, often what I come to in coaching is saying to people, hey, that's the thing that I've struggled with too. And so I think when we take that pressure away from ourselves and we don't think about productivity as being something that we need to get perfect all the time, and we just focus on just getting a couple of % better in the way we do each of these habits, that's really where the magic is. I think as soon as we start to introduce this idea of perfectionism, trying to get everything right all the time, it can just become really dispiriting. So my invitation to you is just to think about this question of what can I get 2% better today or 3 or 4% better next week, rather than trying to focus on perfection. And from there, that's where you can start to make space for what matters.